Good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time it is for you, but you are listening to the Varsity Locker Room podcast. Coach Frank Kill and co-host Coach Matt Tabler. Last week I said head coach, and I'm like, I'm no longer a head coach. So
we're still coaches. We just don't, we're not affiliated with any school anymore, but we're still head coach. Hey, we join the rest of the people in the crowd. They're all head coaches.
That's right.
So we're just two more to be in there.
The locker room head coach, sideline head coach, but what a great week of first round of basketball. Obviously, you and I got to watch a lot of the tip-off classic this past week, but man, what a great week of just high school sports in general with high school state semifinals in football. The big game that happened on Saturday,
Notre Dame,
USC. So go Irish! And unfortunately, the team up north obviously took down the Ohio State Buckeyes. And you know what? Neither you or I are Buckeye fans. We live in the great state of Ohio, but we're not Buckeye fans.
Honestly, I can say that I felt bad for Ryan Day. And I know that just because all the hate he's getting right now, but if you take his record and his composite record, if you take Michigan out and some of his bowl games, like for him to feel the heat he's feeling, I kind of felt bad.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't feel bad for Ohio State necessarily, but for Coach Day, I think he does a tremendous job. And you talk about a stressful job. That's one stressful job.
Most definitely.
Has.
And you talk about you don't feel bad for Ohio State. I don't think we feel bad for the Ohio State fans who are obnoxious and kind of
just like Browns fans. Oh wait, we're Browns fans.
Yeah, exactly. But they've been spoiled for so long with winning traditions, and they just happened to lose that last game of the season that they put more value into the first 11 games. And for you and I mean, if you're a 90 to 95%, winning percentage, that's Hall of Fame material. But, Ohio State fans don't care.
And I think I'm more jealous because Ohio State fans have so much to root for and have so much positive every year. Us being Browns fans, us being Irish fans. Let's be honest with that. The Irish, other than a couple of years making the playoffs, and then we lay an egg that first round, that you get jealous of someone like Ohio State. So they have it good. Be careful what they wish for, I guess what you'd say. You never know what's going to follow.
I don't want to see an Ohio State Notre Dame matchup the first round of the playoffs.
No.
Like, give me SMU or somebody else.
Yeah.
But, hey, we're talking about high school hoops here. And you know what a great way to, start off our podcast. Talking about, sports in general, but high school basketball is back. We had a great week of it. We're going to recap some games, talk about the game of the week.
It's going to be a good one this week. I'm excited to talk about that when we get there to the game of the week.
So we're going to preview some games, talk about the players of the week. This week, last week, we'll go over our over and under from last week. We weren't so hot. And then speaking of that, who's hot, who's not?
Well, we have a good show on tap, recapping week 1 of the high school boys basketball season, the scoreboard. The scoreboard recap is sponsored by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Professional Realty. Let's find your dream home. See Dalton Brenner for all your real estate needs. Deal with Dalt.
And last week, kicked off the week on Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving. We had OG at Van Buren. Van Buren gets a really big win, 60-45. First time OG has lost a first night game since 2005.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So 19 years have gone by where the OG Titans have won their first game of the season. And for them to lose it on the road at Van Buren definitely was a shocker for me, but kudos to the Van Buren team and the coaching staff with Mark Buns, what they've done, and man, what a great win.
Yeah, and if you look at the rest of the scoreboard as you go, there were not really too many surprises in some of the other games that we looked at. But getting back to the last episode, when we were tossing around the tip-off going Wednesday, Friday, Coach Adams told me that's how the tip-off started the first 2 or 3 years. And then the state came in and said, you can't play games on that Wednesday anymore. So that's why they moved to the Friday, Saturday, because then we were talking about, wouldn't that be so much better because the Ohio State Michigan game's always at Saturday and no one would have to worry about
you failed to do
getting
your research before last week's episode.
I did. And so chalk one up that I failed failed on, but I'm usually organized. But yeah, some other scores, St. Henry, we didn't think that they were going to do very well against a very good Russia team. Russia was victorious 65-49. And then Ada kind of maybe an upset because they beat Ridgemont, and we'll talk more about Ridgemont a little later because you got to cover their game last night. They were victorious 45-44 in Coach Salter's return for the Bulldogs, his second go around. So there were some other games, Toledo Start at Findlay. Toledo Start really handled Findlay, and I think this might be Findlay's story all year, struggling to score the basketball. Scored 29 points to the Toledo Start Spartans 63. So it could be a tough year scoring wise, but like we talked about in our previews, I think Coach Gross is just trying to get these guys' feet wet, and it's probably not the best game to start out with because Toledo Star is going to be a pretty good basketball team this year.
Well, when you lose all the experience from last year, you lose Montgomery again to this year to injury and obviously early enrollment. You're starting over.
Yeah.
With a lot of kids who basically have zero experience.
Without a doubt. So let's go to Friday, November 29th. That was the really official kickoff where there were a lot of good games. Looking at the schedule, Frank, I think that we should probably focus on the tip-off classic because the first night was a great night. I talked to Coach, or I call him Coach Evans, Dave Evans out of Elida, the athletic director. He says two of the best crowds Friday and Saturday that he's seen in a very long time. So people were excited to get this basketball season kicked off. And the first game was Bath versus Shawnee, and it kind of went how we probably most likely thought it would. Shawnee only won by 19, but they were in control the whole game. I don't think they even took many outside shots. They just were attacking the rim. I was waiting kind of for Bath to go to a zone to kind of keep their penetration out. I think Shawnee only shot 7 or 8 threes all night. They're capable of shooting it, but they were just taking what Bath was giving it. And you look at the big three for Shawnee, and I think we're going to be calling these guys' names out a lot. And Trevick Berkey had 23, Beckett had 21, and Jagger Hutchins had 11, and they shot 56% from the floor. But you're going to shoot at a high clip if you can attack the rim like they did.
Well, the one thing that I really appreciated from Bath, even though they were on the losing end, but Logan Markley with his 26 points, got to the basket, was able to create, do some things that, I did not expect to see him. And, Jaden Ryan, big guy, 9 points, from him. And the guy that I was kind of disappointed in.
Let me guess, Jackson White.
Yeah. Jackson Foster.
Or Jackson Foster.
But he was a kid only because I had such high expectations for him. And you just saw it in those 2 nights. He looked frustrated in terms of just not being himself. And if you're Jackson, it's a long season. And at the end of the day, you got to continue to keep grinding. He did. In that second game, he kind of got to the basket a little more. I think he ended up with 6 points the second night. But for Bath to come away the way that they did, obviously 0-2, not really what you want for Coach White, but there was some progress. But for Shawnee, big nights from Beckett and Trevick, and Trevick had a great weekend.
Yeah, without a doubt. And if I say without a doubt one more time, just shoot me, Frank. But honestly, if you look at it, I would talk to some Bath people, and actually Jackson Foster is coming off of a shoulder injury, and it's on his shooting shoulder. So that could have played a little effect. Also, he played football for the first time in 3 years, and he had a lot of catches for a lot of yards. He was over 1,000 yards receiving, so he probably still had. And then you think about him maybe pushing a little bit. He was the leading scorer from last year. He's under a new coach, a new system, and I didn't feel like he took it to the rim as much as he should have that first night. And then I felt like second night, he was starting to get a little more comfortable. And as you say, as the season goes on, he'll start to feel the flow, he'll start to get his basketball legs, and I look for him to have a big year.
Well, and then in the second game that night, boy, what a great game. LCC beating Elida 58-52. That game was really, back and forth the whole time. It was our game of the week. It was a 2 to 4 point game the entire time. LCC's Jordan Pretty, 23 points. Azad Burton, freshman, 12 points. And Jackson White with 10 points. And they shot 50% from the floor. So for the T-Birds, to me, what a great night to kick off, because shooting 50% from the floor at the Elida Fieldhouse in front of a great environment, because the second game is always a bigger one because, the Elida fans, the Shawnee and the Bath fans stick around. great environment to kick off your season.
I think if you look at a key to this entire game, because both teams had 18 turnovers, which I was kind of surprised on the Elida part, just because they had the experienced backcourt that they wouldn't turn it over as much. But LCC's pressure is just at you the entire game. They're always on the ball handlers, always slapping. You have to be strong with the ball. But the biggest key then it comes down to, because both teams had 18 turnovers, was the shooting from the floor. Just like you said, Elida's at their home court. They only shoot 43% as opposed to LCC's 50%. I felt like LCC kind of ran their motion a little better and were a little more selective in the shots, as opposed to Elida, because that first quarter probably brought their shooting percentage down. I felt like Elida was pushing a little too much and not taking the shots that they needed to take. But yes, it was a terrific game. LCC gets a nice out of bounds play to Jordan Pretty, and with about 50 seconds to go, and that kind of sealed the game there.
Well, for Elida, you got to be pleasantly surprised seeing Amari Walsh having the weekend that he did. Friday night he had 16 points, with Marcus Hill with 10 points, and then Zori Island with 13. So you get three guys in double figures, and then you have Parker Krim with 9 points with some big rebounds. So great balance there. They're just going to need that fifth guy, because Evan Jackson, that first game, really was non-existent. And in the second night, he was a little more assertive, but they're going to need five guys to kind of contribute every night.
And it goes back to turnovers too. I went back and did a little research. Last year, Elida was 11-0 when they had 12 or less turnovers a game. So that's kind of where you got to stay away from that 18 turnovers. And that's where the experienced backcourt has to take care of the basketball.
Also on Friday night, Crestview traveled down the road to Van Wert. Back and forth game, for a little bit. Van Wert led by 1, but were outscored by 11 just in the second quarter. And, this is a Coach Best team for Van Wert, going up against his old team that he used to coach. And, Coach Best, obviously, he made a comment about Ren Sheets being the best post player in D6 in this area. I think he's one of our best post players in just Northwest Ohio because of his, versatility, his strength, and his, ability to score around the rim on both ends of dominating the glass. And he's a kid who can block some shots. He's very athletic. Just had a great luncheon with him the other day at the Rotary. Very personal.
Well, Coach Best better say he's one of the best ones, because he scored 31 points. I mean, he had half their point. I mean, almost half their point, over half their points, because Crestview won 61-44 over Van Wert, and he had 31. So he better be saying that at that point. But no, he is. And Coach Best has watched him over the last 2 or 3 years, being a teacher there, knows the kid and knows the work ethic that he has. And it's not something that he just goes out and does. He puts all that work into it to get those 31.
But we know Van Wert's a work in progress. Keaton Welch leads them, with 11 points. But again, playing two freshmen and Crummy with 12 and then Kelly with 6, those guys are going to struggle throughout the year. But I see a work in progress. The Cougars are going to get better each and every night because it's a Jeremy Best team. But they're also youth is going to be exposed. And you have a sophomore point guard with a freshman point guard and another, 6'6", freshman post player. You're going to have your ups and downs because you only have one senior, and you're going to rely on a lot of your, scoring from underclassmen.
And they're going to keep taking steps towards the right direction with Coach Best. And we're going to see that as we cover Van Wert, Delphus St. John's game last night here in a little bit. They're just going to keep taking those steps forward, and they're going to keep getting better. Another game on Friday night was Perry at Allen East. Perry was only down 3 with 3 minutes to go, but ended up getting beat by the Mustangs 69-55. Some defensive breakdowns led to that. It was I got the chance to talk to Coach Nolde. He said it was up tempo the entire game. And that's what's great about these coaches. We can send them a quick text and they can give us a little bit of what they felt, how the game went or everything like that. And Coach Nolde was so pleased with how hard his team played. He liked the tempo they were playing. He was a little disappointed in some breakdowns, but if you look at individual scoring for Allen East, they made a lot of threes. Yeah. They made a lot of threes, and he had 4 of them, Deacon Jones, and he finished the game with 22. And Helser had 12 points, and Ethan Young, yep. Coach Young's son had 11 points, and he hit 3 threes. And then Brooks had 10 points, and he hit 2 threes. So Allen East made 10 threes for the game. You got to get out there and defend it. I like the way Allen East plays. I know that you talk a little more about them because you got to cover them against Ridgemont last night. But for Perry, their leading scorer was Hunter Scott, the quarterback off the football team, with 15 points. Boss Horson had 14. And then Coach Nolte's really high on this freshman, Amir Warner, 14 points last night in his first game, or on Friday night, and he was just very pleased. Moving on to the St. Henry Spencerville game, Spencerville walked all over St. Henry 71-45. The usual suspects are scoring for Spencerville. It's going to be like this all year. Owen Sensabaugh had 24, Will Sensabaugh had 21, and Carter Orr added 11, while St. Henry's Austin Zimmerman had 13 and Carter LaGuire had 13.
Also, with New Bremen at Ottoville's Ashton Miller scores 15 points and Landon Horseman 14. Ottoville gets a big win. 46-41 in overtime. Boy, to kick off your season in overtime, you really learn a lot about your team, but you really don't know what you're going to get. I mean, when you get bonus basketball, a lot of times these kids, again, they may have played 30 to 32 minutes already. There's some guys who never come off the floor. And then you go to overtime, these kids are spent at this point. So, for Ottoville to get that type of production from Miller and Horseman, but then New Bremen gets Roger Rogan Muter, 11 points. It's a low scoring game, but that's what you're going to get from a MAC school and in a PCL school like Ottoville. It's going to be a grind.
And we'll revisit Ottoville here a little bit at the end. We got a little talk about them a little bit, but moving on to Saturday night, consolation game. It was Bath versus Elida. Elida took care of the ball. They were under that 12 turnover mark. Like I said, they were undefeated last year. They took care of it, only had 8 turnovers. It was actually a close game throughout, but they made enough plays down the stretch. They sealed it at the free throw line, going 12 for 15 on the game. They were victorious 45-37 over Bath.
I think Amari Walsh, another big game for the Bulldogs with 25 points. Brody Altenbaugh with 8. And again, you talked about the threes that Elida made. They had 5 of them for the game, but I was a little kind of disappointed. I know he's going to have these games because he's the facilitator, but Zori Island was just kind of out of his element a little bit. I did not see the explosiveness, and I think Bath did a really good job of jumping on his left shoulder and making him go right. And for Zori, he's a great job. He didn't force a lot, and so therefore he was getting the ball to Walsh and Brody Altenbaugh. But again, he was creating offense for his team.
And I disagree. Just watching both games, I felt like Zori played so much better compared to Friday night. And I guess that's not really what you were saying, but I felt like he was feeding the hot hand when the hot hand needed to be fed.
Definitely.
He took as many shots in the 4 quarters against Bath that he did in 1 quarter against Shawnee. So he wasn't trying to be that scorer. Right. He knew that, hey, my shot's not on. I got to get involved in the game somehow. And I thought that was kind of a key to feed the hot hand, because sometimes a senior can get jealous of a junior that's scoring all those points. But when you allude to Amari Walsh, he was one of the all-tournament team performers, and he had a great game. And then Brody hit some big threes, 2 big threes for Elida, and finished with 8, which is nice to see. Then on the Bath side, Logan Markley was another all-tournament performer. He backed up a nice night on Friday night with 16 more points. And then, like we talked about, Jackson Foster was getting more assertive to the rim, was not as shy to shoot the basketball, and he needs to continue to do that. He can't worry about his misses. He has to keep going forward, and he scored 6 points. But Bath only made 2 threes compared to Elida's 5. So right there, that's 9 points, and you get beat by 8.
And if you're Logan Markley, to think that you walked away from the tip-off class, here's a kid who's playing for Bath, obviously going 0-2, but averaging 21 points a game.
Yeah.
So Logan Markley is a huge bright spot for the Wildcats that I didn't have on my radar. So, I can't wait to see his progression throughout the season goes, but it's a long season. We always talked about it. One team's going to start 0-2, 2 teams are going to be 1-1, and you're going to have a 2-0 team.
Yeah. All right. In the championship game, we had LCC versus Shawnee, and it was kind of a late arriving crowd. I'm not sure if it was still the Ohio State fans still looking the rooms from the day before. I saw a lot of bright yellow Michigan shirts there, including Coach Q. You couldn't miss him up in the balcony, bright yellow with this big M on there. But it was that late third inning crowd at a Los Angeles Dodgers game. They just kept trickling in, and they got their money's worth, and they even had some extended time.
Maybe that's why they showed up late, because they knew we were going to get some bonus basketball. But you think about that LCC Shawnee game, and LCC gets out to a really good, comfortable lead at halftime, but then gets it up to 21, 22 points midway through the third quarter. And when I was on the broadcast, I kept saying there's 13 minutes of basketball left. And really, if you're Shawnee and you're Coach Triplett, that's what you had to keep preaching. Chip away. It's a possession game. We have to get a stop score mentality. And I really think that LCC kind of fell right into the trap of Shawnee and Shawnee's zone and their 1-2-2, 3-2, half court zone trap. But LCC, I felt, played not to lose.
I think this is where the inexperience came out. Yep. And this is what we were talking about last episode, when I felt like Elida could have done some of this to LCC, 3/4 court or full court, not in the half court, but they were just discombobulated. They weren't on the same page. They didn't know if they wanted to put a guy in the middle. Coach Powell ran a guy in the middle a couple times just to set a screen for his guards, but they looked really confused. And that's what you're going to get with an inexperienced team. Later down the road, and probably next game, they're going to be prepared for that. Coach Powell knows and sees what he has to work on. But the 22-point lead, and some of that is propelled by Beckett Berkey being in foul trouble. Gets 2 fouls in the first quarter. Coach trusts him, puts him in, and it was really just an unfortunate foul. There was two guys pushing each other on the baseline, 70 or 92 feet from the other basket, and he gets his third foul 30 seconds into the second quarter and has to basically sit
right
till the third quarter. And that lead continued to balloon to 22. But I tell you what, Shawnee's resiliency going into that, and didn't let him. And like you said, I'm sure Coach Tripp was like 13 minutes. Let's get it to this with so much time. Let's get it to single digits.
You have to have that.
And you had to win those small battles to win the war. And they actually gave themselves a chance to win in the end. And if it wasn't for Jordan Pretty hitting one of 2 free throws to send it to overtime, they don't win that basketball game.
But I had like some deja vu kind of feelings there, because when they went to that 1-2-2 half court trap, it reminded me back in the days of the George Manguses, because here's a 6'4", 6'7", Trevick Berkey, like a George Mangus, who was about 6'4", 6'5", but they always had 2 big guys on the block. So when you had Jagger on one block and you had Beckett Berkey on another block, you're 6'6" getting rebounds. And not to say they were some cherry picking, but they were leaks where they just pitched it up to Trevick, and Trevick had 2 big boom shakalakas.
Yeah. I heard you on the broadcast, by the way. Our broadcasts were right beside one another, and I just hear boom shakalaka. And I was thinking, is that Aaron? No, that's Coach Kill. That was not Aaron Matthews.
But I felt like that was the energy that the Shawnee Indians needed to get the kind of life back into them, saying, hey, we're not out of this. And so kudos to Tripp to kind of throw that wrench in the game plan, and you know what? That's why he saved it to the second half. So he kind of threw the element of surprise at LCC.
So LCC was led by another all-tournament performer, or 2 all-tournament performers, and Jordan Pretty had 33 points. Azad Burton had 14, while Trevick Berkey had 24 for Shawnee. Beckett, who battled foul trouble there in the first half, ended up with 14, and Tate Bender had 14.
And Beckett scores 12 of those points in the second half.
Yeah. And he was taking it to the rim strong. Yep. He was doing exactly what he should have. Another game that we thought was going to be an interesting game, and I got this wrong. I was going with the Wildcats of Kalida. They got a win the first night. I was looking pretty good, I thought, going into it. Arlington had a win on the first night, but this game was Arlington winning 53-35 at Kalida. Talking to Coach Steck, he just said we struggled with Arlington's zone, and their 6'10" guy, Calvin Willow, in the middle, who had 14 points, was just a rim protector, and it was hard to get around him.
Well, again, I wasn't going to go against Coach Vermillion from Arlington, but you look at Arlington and obviously getting that 14 points there, but Jace Vermillion with 10 points and Brady Griggs with another 11 points, but again, those are the great non-conference games that coaches like to play early on in the season. You get a little different look from different teams. And, for both of those coaches, obviously they're both well-experienced veteran coaches, know that, hey, it's a long season.
Yeah. Another surprise, just one other game I'd like to revisit, is Crestview, after winning over Van Wert on the first night, faced Miller City, and Miller City beat them 41-35. So after Crestview had a big win on Friday over their former coach. They turn around. And so Miller City could be a team to reckon with. We talked a little bit about them in the PCL, but that's a nice victory for them to pull that one out. If we look at some other scores, Temple beat Continental 33-30. Ottoville got another win over Perry, which they kind of just started the game on a 21-4 run, and Ashton Miller led them with 24 points again, and they won that one 56-22. Really no other games. Our Waynesfield, weren't sure who they were playing. They got beat by Riverside in the first round of the Botkins tip-off. But they turned around in the consolation game and knocked off Calvary Christian 61-44. All right, Tuesday's games, and we'll shoot through these real quick so we can get to our game of the week this week.
Tuesday, Defiance at Rossford. Defiance gets a big win, 56-32. Last night, Allen East traveled to Ridgemont. Ridgemont, man, came out cold as ice, but they come back to win 65-60. They were down 15 points. It was actually 15-0, I believe, to start the first quarter, where Allen East just could do anything and everything. And you know what? If you were Coach Belcher, you had to be really excited the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game. But, there's another 28 minutes you have to play. And unfortunately, some foul trouble. Allen East got down. Allen East have great guard play when things are going well for them. But when things start heading south, they get a little uncharacteristic and start fouling and get out of place defensively. But Ridgemont did a great job of kind of just chipping away. Big guy inside, step outside, made about 4 threes. But then their Xavier Stuck, great player for him, kind of got him back in the game. A couple players just making some big plays. And again, the total game of 32 minutes and really went down to the wire, and almost thought I was going to go in another overtime game. So good win for the Ridgemont after taking that tough loss to Ada, losing by 1 on Friday night, turning around and playing Allen East on Tuesday. Big win for him.
I got one question for you, though. We talked about this a few episodes back. You said Ridgemont has the best popcorn. Did you give it the taste test last night?
They always have the best popcorn when you smell it, but I didn't have it because I'm on a diet.
Coach killing a diet. That's hilarious. All right, let's revisit one more.
Diet.
Let's seafood, eat it. All right, let's go one more game here, because this was a really good game. I'm, talking about it last year, Van Wert was beat by 31 points by Delphos St. John's, and you said in the last episode, I tell you what, it ain't going to be a 31-point game. Well, then after watching what Crestview did to Van Wert, I'm still thinking in the back of my mind, this could be a 31-point game.
The same thing.
This could be a 31-point game. But when you have one team shoot 55% from the floor, and then you have another team shoot over 60 at 62%, you're going to have a nice high-scoring game. Hopefully, you're going to have a close game if they both take care of the basketball. And that's exactly what it was, because Andrew Elwer, the whole sequence was Van Wert hit 2 points to tie the game. Delphos St. John's doesn't call timeout, goes the length of the floor. Obviously, they have the ball in their playmakers' hands, and Cam gets it tipped away, and it goes right to his brother Andrew, and Andrew takes it right to the basket with 3.5 seconds and gets fouled, makes 1 and 2, and that seals the victory for the Blue Jays.
Such a tough loss for Van Wert, to think that you shot 62% and you lose. But here's the thing, Delphos St. John's, they take 4 more extra shots. And, that's the reality that, like, hey, those 4 possessions or maybe 4 turnovers or 4 offensive rebounds maybe have been the big difference maker. So, if you're Coach Best, you're disappointed because you lost at home.
Yeah.
But it was a close game to a really good team that I know D7 has St. John's predicted high up there in the rankings. Yeah. And, if you're Coach Heller, you're like, hey, our first game back, we know we still have some football legs out there. But the reality is, you get a Cam Heller to go, 39 points, for
14 of 22 from the floor.
And that's pretty good shooting.
Yeah. And I got a chance to talk to Coach Elwer today, and he said, take nothing away from Van Wert. They played a heck of a game. Like, they were well coached. They hit shots. They took care of the basketball. But he says, we're still trying to get acclimated. We still got football legs under us. We have some new faces in the lineup, and some of those new faces played some big minutes down the stretch, which is only going to benefit us. But all the credit was going towards Van Wert and how well they were prepared in how well they played. So, yeah, like you said, Cam Elwer had 39, but you get someone like Braden Klaus, 11 points, 5 for 9 from the floor. Andrew, who was his Robin to his Batman, you know, kind of thing with the brothers, goes 4 for 7 from the floor with 10 points.
Well, then you had Keaton Welch leading the way for Van Wert again, 23 points, 9 of 16 from the floor. Cohen Bragg, 16 points, 6 for 6 from the floor, including 4 3-pointers. Zach Crummy, 13 points for the freshman, and Griffin McCracken, 13 points. So scoring 74 points and 73 points, boy, what a great game. Again, if you're St. John's, you got to like the fact that you can get up and score, but someone's got to step up and play some defense.
I'll take 74 points my first game.
Bet. All right. Week 2, game of the week. Here we are. Game of the week. Shawnee at Crestview. Both teams are 1-1. This is brought to you by Frickers of Lima. We're now for the fall season. Stop by and get select appetizers half price after 9 p.m. Perfect for the after ball game selection. Practice to end a long week or day.
I think we could actually probably add that to the winter season as well. It still says fall season. They did a great job of sponsoring it.
It's not technically fall yet.
Yeah.
December 22nd is winter.
Yeah, I don't know my dates. I thought this game was intriguing. Both 1-1. Usually you're going to pair of undefeateds, but both teams came off big victories on Friday night. Crestview defeats Van Wert by 17. Shawnee defeats Bath by 19. They both turn around and play hard-fought Saturday games where Crestview went down to Miller City by 6 and Shawnee went down in overtime by 3. Some other interesting things is in the last 9 times they played, they couldn't string 10 together, could only find the last 9 games. Crestview has gone 7-2 in this series, including last year a win that defeated the Indians at Shawnee 61-56.
Which, I'm completely shocked only because during that COVID span, with, I even before that, probably like with the George Mangus group, they didn't lose many games.
Yeah.
So to think that like Crestview took 2 losses
Yeah.
during those 9, that's crazy.
Well, there was a little gap, and that's over the last 9 meetings. There was like a 3 or 4 gap where 3 or 4 year where they didn't play, so the series was non-renewed, and then it was picked back up. So it might have been through those.
Maybe
years.
Jeremy Best says we're not going to play,
which might have been a wise decision during that time. Well, obviously, featured player, we've been talking about him, Ren Sheets. Numbers could be a little inflated at this point, but he's at 20.5 a game. That's probably what he'd probably be at. Scored 31, but just 10 the next night versus Miller City. And then Hayden Parrott had 14 points versus Van Wert. Another player for Crestview is Tommy Hefner, who led the Knights in scoring with 12 versus Miller City after scoring 10 the first night. Crestview struggled from the 3-point line versus Miller City, only 2 of 11 after it was pretty hot versus Van Wert. So that's just interesting to look at in terms of, and Miller City always does a good job of taking your best players away. Miller City has that big inside strong presence.
Right.
I know that Van Wert has a couple tall guys, but freshmen, you're going against an experienced Sheets player and Ren. I know Miller City probably took that away, kind of forcing Crestview to shoot the 3. They still get out to the shooters. Miller City's athletic enough to do that.
Well, we'll talk about Shawnee here. Again, easy players to talk about. Trevick Berkey, all-tournament tip-off team. He scored 23 the first night, and then 21 against, 23 against LCC. And then, just having a great 2-game span. I did not see this type of kid last year as a freshman. You could just tell he plays with so much more comfortability out there on the floor, his vision, his ability to get to the rim and score, his leaping ability. My gosh, he had the one dribble dunk, against Bath. And I thought, wow, that was explosion right there.
2 more against LCC.
Yeah.
And I failed to mention that earlier. He would have been the 5th all-tournament player in Trevick after scoring 47 points over the weekend.
And Beckett Berkey having 21, versus Bath, and battled foul trouble against LCC, still managed 14 points. But Jagger Hutchins, 11 versus Bath. And then Tate Bender, great game against LCC. Just hard-nosed. We talk about coach's son, but he's also a kid who's not afraid to do the dirty work. And Tate, he ended up fouling out against LCC, but you can't fault him for his effort. I mean, he was all over the floor, making some big shots, hit some big threes. But I loved how Tate Bender played that game against LCC. I mean, he was not afraid of anything. But if you're Shawnee, a guy like Jagger Hutchins, he just couldn't find his rhythm on that 3-point line. And as soon as Jagger starts finding his rhythm and his stroke, the Indians are going to be tough to even handle, because you got Trevick and Beckett who take the ball so strong to the rim. You got to stop him, which leaves guys like Tate, Jagger Hutchins, the Miller kid, guys that are going to be able to take some open shots. Got to be ready to catch and shoot.
All right. So going into this, okay, I don't know how many times, Frank, you were 1-1, or you split over a weekend. Let's just say you split over a weekend. What's your mindset? Because you both won big games. So you could be the coach of either team. You both won big games on Friday night, turned around, played hard fought games on Saturday, and now you got to go play the following Friday. Do you wash your hands of the weekend? Do you talk about it, reflect on it, get rid of it, and move on to your next opponent? You building off of it, learning from it?
If you're Crestview right now, I mean, you're at home, so you don't lose at home. But this team that Shawnee's coming in with is nothing like the two teams that they played prior, because Van Wert doesn't have the big guys that handle the ball like Shawnee does. Miller City doesn't have the big guys that Shawnee has that are skilled and diverse that can go inside and out. So if you're Crestview, you just simply say, guys, we've experienced a lot. We're just going to stick to our game plan and keep building what we know how to do. We won and won. We played 2 games. Let's move on to game 3. But if you're Shawnee, you've played, your style of ball every night, and you've mixed it up, man to man. You went to zone. You went full court. That's the Triplett way.
Yeah.
And if Mark Triplett, he's gonna throw it in there. He's gonna shuffle the deck, and he's gonna, every night could be a different night, because he plays to his matchup, but he also plays to his strengths.
I was talking about this the other night, and you were talking about Coach Tripp and what a great job he does. But you got to think on the other bench too, Doug Etzler. Like, how blessed are we in Northwest Ohio to have so many great coaches? That's why it was so difficult as being a coach in this area, because there's so many darn good coaches that devote so much time to preparation to make sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed. Like, we are so blessed in this area to have the coaching staff.
I said it today. I spoke to Jimmy Linder's wife, at one of my meetings today, and she's like, "Do you miss it?" I said, "You know what? Honestly, I miss the rapport that I had with the coaches. Being an independent coach for many years, in the conference a few, but life is too short to have enemies. So I tried to make friends and relationships with all these coaches. And you're exactly right. We are blessed here in Northwest Ohio to have some not only great coaches, but great people.
Without a doubt. And what they do for our kids is just top notch. And, kind of going back to that Ryan Day thing, be careful what you wish for if you want to coach out as a spectator, as a fan, as a supporter of the high school, because all these coaches in this area do a tremendous job. Unfortunately, I got the Indians going over to Crestview in this game of the week and winning by 7, but it's at Crestview. I'll take off 2. I say Shawnee by 5.
All right. I got the Knights. I'll take the Knights by 5. Okay. I mean, that's I love it, because I just don't think Crestview loses at home very often. I know they're a good Shawnee team, but I'm going to take the Crestview Knights at home, led by Ren Sheets, dominating inside.
Okay, we got it on recording.
All right.
We can't go back from there.
You are listening to the Varsity Locker Room with Frank Kill and Matt Taylor. So you got our predictions there. So we're going to go to our conference rundown, brought to you by Stolly Insurance, looking out for you and for your family over 100 years. Top-tier agents who treat you with respect and get you the answers you need when you need them the most.
All right, so just looking at a couple intriguing games, Findlay's going to try to bounce back against a Clay team that's pretty good. They'll have their work cut out for them. We actually have league play starting this week in the BVC, which we'll get to here in a second. But one game that's really interesting is a Western Buckeye League team versus a Northwest Conference team. Spencerville won the conference last year. Elida finished 3rd. Elida defeated Spencerville, gave Spencerville only one of their 5 losses last year. They defeated them 56-55 at the Fieldhouse. Over the last 10 meetings, 5-5.
Well, if you look at this game, it's an intriguing game, because you have the Elida backcourt of Maury Walsh and Zori Island. You have Spencerville's Owen Sensabaugh and Will Sensabaugh. And then Spencerville has the Carter Orr. They have 3 guys I think that they're going to rely on. But I like the fact that, there's Walsh, Island, you got Parker Krim,
Yeah.
and then who's the
Evan
guard?
Jackson,
And then
you have
kid that came over.
Marcus Hill.
Yeah,
I'm
Marcus
sorry.
Hill. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You have 5 guys that are very athletic. So I like the fact that Elida's going on the road, but it's going into another hostile environment where the Simpson Balls just don't lose on that floor.
No.
They find so many ways to win. That's an intriguing matchup. So you know what? I like this game. I'm going to go. I hate saying
I'm
this.
not picking these games.
You never do.
I'm picking the game of the week. I'm not picking every game. No one gives a crap what I think anyway, or they're just going to make fun of me. So I'm going to let you predict it if you want. I'm just telling you, I'm not predicting this game because I took an Elida Bulldog team that I thought was pretty good over to Spencerville 2 years ago, and it was a running clock. And I felt pretty good going to the game. And you know me, Mr. Pessimistic, never feels good. I was like, I feel pretty good about this running clock. I've never thought a positive thought after
There's
that.
a reason why we're pessimists, because we have those optimistic thoughts before the game, and then honestly the outcome's like, boy, was I dead wrong. All right, moving on.
Let's go to the Northwest Conference. Temple at Allen East.
Temple and Allen East. Again, I watched last night's team. Allen East do a lot of really good things. Temple 2-0, looking for their first 3-0 start in 13 years.
Come on, Coach Bowman.
Coach Bowman, another human being that, man, he's going to get the fast pass to heaven. But for Coach Bowman to get this 2-0 start the way that he did, and then obviously now coming into Allen East took a tough loss on Tuesday night. I just look for Allen East to bounce back here, and Allen East won 70-50 last year. Last 10 meetings, Allen East 8-2, and if you're Coach Belcher, you're looking to bounce back, and he's just looking to find ways to spurt his team. But I told him, just recently that stick to the plan. Martise Kimber always had the SCTP mentality. Stick to the plan. Don't detour off of what you've been preaching, because these kids are going to have to start buying in. And, he comes from a Shelby County league that it's a grind. It's a defensive grind. But if you take that defensive mentality that his coach is trying to instill into his players with the Allen East scoring mentality, they could be a really tough team in the Northwest Conference, but they just got to put it together.
Okay. Another squirrel moment, because that's a great analysis and I'm not going anything on it. Did you see Coach Bowman there last night? Could have got a double dip, and
I did.
Ridgemont Allen East.
See Coach Bowman
Coach
there.
Bowman was there.
I didn't have the pleasure to talk to him. So he's definitely, he's definitely a guy I could always talk to anytime in any place.
Yep. Like we said, BVC, no real special matchup there, but they are starting league play. But then kind of looking at Lima Senior opening on Friday night, I could consider this a warm-up game on December 6th because they annihilated Bowser last year. I know they scored over the century mark, but they have to back that up playing a Princeton team on Saturday, and then another Division I team in Toledo Whitmer on Tuesday. But another intriguing game on Saturday night. Here we go. I know that your broadcast team at 93.1 The Fan is covering it. It's Delphos St. John's at Elida. Last year, Elida beat Delphos St. John's at Delphos St. John's 54-47. Elida broke a 5-game losing streak versus the Blue Jays, but they are only 2-8 over the last 10 matchups. As we talked about, Delphos St. John's played their first game last night. They will play Kalida on Friday night, so they both have tough matchups that will lead into that game for Saturday.
That game will be covered on Fun 107.1. So
I'm sorry.
Myself will be covering that. But again, a great game again for Delphos St. John's to kind of get back in the swing of things. And Elida, man, this is going to be a great matchup and a tough weekend, a weekend that you always liked but didn't like, because you had Spencerville and then you had Delphos St. John's.
Not fun.
It's two great games, but it's a lot on the coach.
And we're kind of breezing over some of these games because we kind of want to get to some other few topics here. So if we miss your team, we're going to get back to you. Promise. I think LCC will be an interesting matchup on Saturday. Toledo St. Francis comes to town. Coach Powell said they are big, they are athletic, and they are strong. So that's going to be a tough matchup for the Birds to back up a great weekend that they had. Looking at some other games, the Princeton at Lima Senior game that I talked about a little earlier. Princeton is headed up by a man that graduated from Temple Christian, and Brian Wyatt. He turned around a city program in Cincinnati. They are ranked in the top 10 in Division I. He turned around a Cincinnati Hughes team. went over to Princeton. I got a chance to watch them earlier this year. They're really tough against a great Lima senior team that's ranked number 1 in D2. That's an old GMC matchup. Again, these kids don't even know that. They got out of the GMC in 1999. It was the year before I got there. So it's going to be a fun weekend for the Spartans. They're going to challenge themselves really on Saturday night. And then just talking about Tuesday's game, then they backed that up with Whitmer. Whitmer was a Final Four team last year, and Lima took them to overtime in Lima, 78-74. Whitmer won, and then they went on and played in the state Final Four against Centerville. They have a matchup against Centerville this weekend. Toledo Whitmer does. So talk about teams challenging themselves. These two teams used to be in the same league, so they've met 10 times, but they used to play 2 times a year in that old league that they were in. Lima holds an edge 7-3 over the last 10 meetings. I look for WIMA's covering this game. I get a chance to go with Todd Walker all the way up to Toledo. So any Lima fans that can't make it, it will be on the radio. And I'm sure that's going to be a great game as well.
You are listening to the Varsity Locker Room podcast with Frank Kill and Matt Tabler. We'll be moving on to the Players of the Week picks, sponsored by Henderson Concrete. For affordable, high-quality concrete services, trust Henderson Concrete Construction. With over 20 years of experience, they deliver reliable and durable results on time, every time. Choose Henderson Concrete Construction for a job done right. Call Adam Henderson today for your free estimate. 419-235-1387.
Man, talk about great people. And Bruce Bowman, Adam Henderson is a solid dude, and I don't mean, no pun intended, a rock solid dude. I know he deals with concrete, but like he just did some work at my sister's house, everything to a T, made sure everything was right. Just runs a great business. If you're looking to get concrete, get a hold of Adam.
He's done great work for me, myself. Again, not saying cheap and affordable, but he's really good at what he does. And again, if you want cheap, you can always buy cheap. It's never going to be good. So, Adam Henderson is great to work with. But as we talk about these players of the weeks, and last week's, you picked one, I picked one. Not saying mine was disappointing.
They didn't disappoint either one.
They both exceeded my expectations, but I look at your pick and how he exceeded it because I was thinking about the experience. And, you look at a guy like Jordan Pretty, who went off for a total of 56 points for the weekend. 33 on Saturday during the championship game, hitting some big free throws down the stretch. Nothing's more nerve-wracking when you have thousands of people staring at you, your team is depending on you, and you go to the free throw line. My dad always said, well, they're free. No one's guarding you.
That's what all the old timers say.
Yeah. Says the guy who, says, they played tough defense back in the day. Dad, you gave up 100 points and there wasn't even a 3-point line.
God rest our dad's souls. But, neither of them are here to defend themselves.
But I looked, I saw the I saw the post game show that Jordan did. And he talked about how his leadership had to step up and how he had to lead these young pups. And he was, he is the junior, but he's the guy that everybody's going to rely on. Man, he did a great job.
And leadership's not just out of your mouth. It's good shot selection. It's calming guys.
Body language.
Yes, body language is a big thing for us coaches. I just felt like he carried himself, even when Shawnee made that run to get back into the game. No panic. If you looked at him, you looked at Coach Powell, you look at the captains of the ship, they weren't panicking.
Right.
And so those young kids that had never experienced this before, with the team coming all the way back in their first varsity minutes, they didn't panic because our player of the week, or my player of the week choice, Jordan Pretty, didn't panic. So
right.
I just felt like he had a great weekend. For you. You were talking about Beckett Berkey, 21 points on Friday night. Felt like he could have had more. He was very, very unselfish with the ball. Unfortunately, foul trouble took his point total down, but they don't get back in that game without him.
Absolutely not.
He scores 14 points. I think all of them, or not close to all of them, were in the second half.
Well, he had 12 points. He had 2 the first half and 12 in the second half.
And just for him, they were looking for him. He had some fresh legs because he was riding the pine in the second quarter, but leaders get looked to in big spots, and people didn't think it was a big spot down 22. Then it got to about 16, still not a big spot. Now it's down to 10, 8, 6, and he's the one, whether he is making the assist or making the basket for them, he carried that team on his back, and they were looking to him. Coach Tripp was looking to him. The other guys were looking for him to make plays, and I felt like he made some very nice plays to get him back in the position to win at the end. So I think that's a great selection.
Well, and we're going to be still blessed because both of these kids are juniors. There's a lot of sophomores and juniors in this area that are really good, and we're just going to see a lot of great brand of basketball these next 24 months.
Yeah, we'll be getting T-shirts out to these guys thanks to all our sponsors. Our sponsors make it possible for us to get T-shirts to these guys, so we'll be getting out to the schools and getting those T-shirts over to you. The next segment, Who's Hot, Who's Cold, brought to you by American Heating, Air Conditioning. American Heating and Air Conditioning is dedicated to providing the best possible solution for your home or business. You can count on us to provide you with a system and solution that fits your unique needs. And since we've installed many systems in the area, we've earned a reputation for doing the job right the first time. All right. Do we do hot or cold first, Frank? Because the cold we could go on forever.
Let's talk about the hot because obviously it's really cold outside right now. So we'll bring some good warming news here. We think about the teams that are, that went 2-0 this past week in LCC, Arlington, Temple, Miller City, and Ottoville. These guys are, I'm not surprised to see Arlington or even a Miller City because they did beat a good team, but Ottoville, Temple, and then I was really surprised. I didn't pick LCC to win the tip-off.
You had them in the first game. If I go back to the recording, I think
that's true. You can fact check that. I did do that only because I said I was very pessimistic in their leadership and their experience and the maturation of the tip-off classic and being able to handle that environment because guys like Jeffrey Williams and Azad Burton, who are freshmen, did a great job of just being even chill. They didn't get caught up in it.
And I felt like they meshed with Jordan. Like they knew Jordan was the man. They took some big shots and made some big shots, but they also knew in big time moments who to get the ball to.
They didn't play scared.
No, they did not play scared. So I thought the meshing. So Coach Powell did a good job to make sure they're meshed. A Miller City and Arlington, I agree with, but Coach Oot at Ottoville kind of has some new personnel. Worked those guys in well. I know the competition may not have been as strong as what LCC faced in there too, but they impressed me. And then Temple Christian to try to put a first 3-0 start in 13 years. Got to make sure that they're hot too. Well, all right, on to the cold.
Last week we talked about who's cold because the OHSA was cold.
Oh, the referees want to hear this one.
This week we talk about the OHSA officials. Obviously, they don't get enough credit for doing the job that they do because obviously you couldn't pay you or I enough money to do what they do.
Never.
We have some really good friends of ours that we used to have the chip off classic with officials and
chip.
So we have
it's chip like as chip around the green.
Correct. Right? Chip, not putt around off the fringe. But again. Yeah. On the Saturday's game, LCC and Shawnee goes into overtime, and you and I both know because we both looked at each other at the same time, and it's a continuation of Ottoville. I looked right at it. Overtime is a continuation of the fourth quarter. Nothing resets except the time, and you just play on. They do a tip, and then when the tip goes up, obviously it's just kind of fourth quarter plus. But as we look at this situation, the referee reset the fouls, and which is a no-no because each team would have been in the bonus going into overtime because LCC had 5 team fouls and Shawnee had 4 team fouls. So the next time Shawnee fouls would have put LCC in the bonus. Well, here we are with a minute into the game of a 4-minute overtime. Shawnee fouls. Tate Bender fouls out. Goes to the bench. LCC fouls, they fouled Jeffrey Williams, should be shooting free throws. Nope. LCC takes it out of bounds. You and I are looking at each other like, whoa, what is going on? They should be shooting free throws. Nope. Play on.
It ends up burning Shawnee in the end because they have to foul 3 or 4 times. 20 seconds go off the clock in a 1-possession game. They just didn't have enough time on the clock. Now, I'm just putting this out there. It's nice that you bring 3 officials in that have been doing it for years, coming to the tip-off. Do you think 3 local officials with the high caliber, we talk about good coaches, we have great officials in this area. Do you really think 3 officials would have let this happen?
Well,
in this
no.
area? No way.
No way.
No way.
Because they're all educated enough.
Yes.
As soon as, like, I mean, you got text message from saying on your airplay. I got text messages
From referees that were listening.
Exactly. And they're like, they're wrong. And again, it's the first time, one of the first few times that you and I actually agreed and the officials agreed with us because we know the rules.
Yes.
And to have 3 quality experienced officials not know the rules.
That's just sad. And like you said, officials are texting us. That means they weren't officiating that night because there's not as many games on that Saturday because you still got football playoffs. So some of them had nights off. There was officials to do that game. I'm sorry. We were going to have some officials on tonight. Neither of them could make it. I think that was just an excuse not to be with Frank and I on the air.
Well, it's probably a good thing because I didn't bring enough firemen.
All right, let's do over-under.
Over-under is brought to you by CCR Realtors. CCR sets the standard when it comes to local real estate. If you are looking to buy or sell, see agent Jody Cartagena for your real estate needs. Now, last week, both you and I were 0-2 on our picks.
We're going to keep a running tally. If it gets close to the end, we'll write down our picks, but we're just going off the cuff. I don't even know what the over-under is. We just wrote down some things, but you want to, I'm sorry, I'm talking over you. Want to review?
You're fine.
You want to review last week?
Again, we talked about, how many wins for Shawnee this weekend. We both, lost, we took the over
on one.
On one, and then how many free throw shot at LCC and Elida game? It was 35. We both agreed on that, but we both lost. It was 31. So we both took the over. So we lost that bet. There's a reason why I don't gamble on these things. I don't gamble at all because one, I don't have the money to do it. But
I gamble all the time.
This week we're going to take the over under Lima Senior total score this weekend versus Bowser and Princeton. So is it total Lima Senior
Senior points?
Just Lima Senior points. So
Bowser, they scored over 100.
Well, and I'm glad you put that in there because I had already had my number. And I'm going to say...
Don't say the number I'm thinking. Remember, I'm a professional gambler. I gamble a lot.
Right. And so...
Don't say this number.
Okay. I'm going to go 168.
Damn it. Well, I was 170 in my head, so I have to go the over. I'm going over on 168. Yeah.
Right. Well, again, but if I'm just thinking of like if they go score 100 on a Friday and then score 68 to 70 on a Saturday. So
I'd look for them to score. Yeah. I think 168's low. Well, no, I think that's really high. Go ahead and make your pick.
No,
I went over. What are you doing?
I'm going to go over
too.
Well.
Okay, so we're either both going to be 1-2 or 0-3 after our first 3. Second one,
Cam Elwer total points this weekend versus Kalida and Elida. Here's a kid who's averaging, plenty of, almost close to 30 points a game. You go ahead. I'm gonna let you set this.
Oh, you are. You're so kind.
I'm generous.
Well, he had 39 points in his opener. He scored a boatload versus. Against Kalida last year, but he also did against Elida, but Elida has a better coach now. Oh, man. I'm going to say 70.
I'm going under.
I'm going over. I'm going over on that 70 right there.
All right.
That's what I am. We'll have to stay tuned for those picks.
All right. Once again, we would like to thank our good friends and our sponsors at the Varsity Locker Room podcast, Frickers of Lima, Stolly Insurance, American Heating and Cooling Conditions, Jody Cartagena at CCR Realtors, Henderson Concrete, and Dalton Brenner at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Listen to the Varsity Locker Room podcast every Wednesday as we will be recapping last week's games and previewing the upcoming games for this week. Until next week, thanks again. Have a blessed day.